So, let's talk about something that, well, it might make you a little squeamish. We're going to tackle a huge question today. Should we be eating insects? It's time to dive into the buzz about bugs and figure out if this is a shift we really need to make for our future.
All right, let's just start with a number, 10 billion. By the year 2050, that's roughly how many people will be living on this planet. Now, that's not just a big number, it's a huge fundamental challenge staring us right in the face.
And that leads to the big question, doesn't it? The one at the heart of all of this. With the resources we have, how in the world are we going to sustainably feed 10 billion people? The answer might be hiding in some pretty unexpected places.
Okay, so before we can even talk about solutions, we've got to get real about the problem. And the problem is, our current food system, especially how much we rely on traditional livestock, is already stretched to its breaking point.
I mean, just picture a hamburger for a second. That one beef patty, the amount of water it took to produce, the sheer amount of land needed for the cow and its feed, it's staggering. Plus, cattle are a huge source of greenhouse gases. The bottom line is, this system is incredibly hungry for resources, and that's just not going to work as our population grows.
So, if the old way isn't working, what's the alternative? Well, this brings us to a pretty unconventional idea. The main event, you could say. It has a fancy scientific name, entomophagy, but really it just means eating insects.
Okay, I can practically hear you through the screen right now. For a lot of us, especially in Western cultures, that quote right there says it all. The ick factor is real, and it's important we acknowledge that. But here's a thought. What if it's all just cultural?
So let's try to put that ew feeling on pause for a second, just for a minute, because when you look at the actual numbers, the cold, hard math, the argument for farming insects gets really, really persuasive.
Okay, look at this. This is where it gets crazy. To get the same amount of protein, crickets need 12 times less feed than cattle. Let that sink in for a second. 12 times less. And water, a tiny fraction. Land, barely any. The efficiency is just, it's off the charts.
So when you see numbers like that, it kind of forces you to think, right? If we're really serious about protecting our planet, about tackling climate change, then we have to accept that the way we eat, it has to change. It just has to evolve.
And that brings us right back to that ick factor we talked about. Because, it turns out, that feeling of disgust, it's not a universal human thing. Not at all. It's actually a pretty specific cultural bias.
Check out this number, 2 billion people. That's how many people around the world already eat insects as a regular part of their diet. More than a quarter of everyone on the planet. All of a sudden, who's the unusual one, right? The person eating them or the person not eating them?
And we're not talking about some quirky snack you try once on vacation. For so many cultures, this is a staple food. We're talking beetles in Southeast Asia, caterpillars in Africa. For centuries, these have been totally normal, nutritious parts of their diet. They've known about this stuff for ages.
But what about safety? That's a huge, totally fair question. And the answer is absolutely yes, as long as it's done right. You know, this isn't about grabbing a random bug from your garden. This is about controlled farming under super strict hygienic conditions to make sure they're safe, just like any other food we eat.
So the big question is, how do we get from ew to yum? Well, the good news is, nobody's saying you have to start with a big bowl of fried crickets tomorrow. There's a much, shall we say, smoother way in.
And this is the secret weapon, really, for anyone feeling a little unsure. The most likely way you'll first try insects, you probably won't even know it's there. Seriously, you won't taste the difference.
So how does that work? It's actually super simple. They take the farmed insects, like crickets, roast them, and then grind them up into this really fine high-protein powder. A flour, basically.
And you can put this flour in all kinds of stuff you already eat. Think about your protein bars after a workout, or pasta, even bread. It's a way to sneak in all those amazing nutritional and environmental benefits without having to, look a grasshopper in the eye.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Look, getting over that ick factor is going to take some time, but the reality of our planet's health, it doesn't really give us the luxury of sticking with the status quo. I think this quote just nails it. What feels like a weird, fringe idea today might actually be the key to our resilience tomorrow. It might not be a choice, but a necessity. So the question really isn't if we can do this, it's will we?